Hey guys, it's Matt. When I started the Mythology series last week, this is part two of the Mythology series. I didn't know about this Netflix TV show called Kaos. It's like a modern version of the Greek gods with Jeff Goldblum as Zeus. And the first minute or so seemed interesting. Maybe I watched a few minutes. And then I kind of went, oh no. The Netflix series Chaos, spelled with a K. This genre-bending series puts a modern twist on Greek and Roman mythology, exploring themes of gender politics, power, and life in the underworld. What does a power struggle amongst ancient gods, life in the underworld, have to do with gender politics? Oh, God, make it stop. Again, I go into the show knowing nothing about it. And very early on, it's Jeff Goldblum playing the part of the king of the gods, Zeus. I went, what the heck is this? And they don't even make him look evil or intimidating. It's Jeff Goldblum as some retired pimp walking around in, what is this, terry cloth? I mean, a terry cloth sweatsuit? He wouldn't even be intimidating walking around the villages, the retirement home in Florida, the villages at night. I mean, and this is supposed to be the all-powerful king of the gods. I went, oh, come on, man. One of the most famous legends in Greek myth are the three fates, said to be beautiful maidens. Apparently, this is the way the fates are portrayed in Netflix's Chaos. And I saw this morning. I said, thank God I turned it off. Three riders, it seems like, of the Trans-Siberian Railroad. The Trans-Siberian Railroad. Oh, you know what? This is actually some sort of truth drop. This is the fate of the modern West and the United States. Okay, so I spend a minute to look up who created this horse shit. And, oh no. Is it Charlie Corvell? And it's right down the middle. We talk about the Goldilocks principle of this reality. How too many things are right down the middle, giving away a false world, which is the best news of all time to people like you and me. They try to play Goldilocks right between men and women, so you just don't know. Why they do this, Matt, that's the Baphomet. I never heard that before. What did you say? Baphomet? I've never heard that. Explain that to me. Why they have to do this over and over, who knows? What a weird, twisted world we live in at this point. Make it stop. Before we talk about this apotheosis of George Washington, it's called a fresco, whatever that is, painted at the top of the Capitol dome, apotheosis, rising one's status up to godlike. Before we talk about this as a transition into mythology, this is part two. Just a few things I was thinking about to leave behind the horrible, wretched Netflix series, Chaos. Remember, the main theme of my mythology video, part one, was all of this is a Humpty Dumpty or a stuffed Lenin, meaning it mostly should have been forgotten about. This legend and lore and myth should have been left behind hundreds of years ago. Maybe some people on the street might say, if things were real, like, yeah, I've heard of this thing, Zeus, but it shouldn't be everywhere. It's in the Saturn rocket. It's not just the Roman. The Apollo missions, that's the Greek. The Greek and the Roman, it's a Humpty Dumpty. It's all over the place. Now it's in a new Netflix series, and it's in movies, and Russell Crowe as Zeus, and it's everywhere. So remember, the main theme of part one is the specifics of these legends is been carried forward into this, quote, modern era artificially. It's too prominent. And if it's too prominent, then it's very important to not milk for some reason. Guys, I just thought of something, and I'm going to squeeze this into the video now, or I'll forget to talk about it, and then get back to what I plan to do, looking at the individual gods and individual myths. But, okay, we know that all of these gods collectively are very important to not milk because they're carried through with such prominence. And if this was the only depiction of Zeus, I wouldn't be saying anything. But the last two major Hollywood depictions of Zeus has been almost trying to destroy Zeus or run Zeus down. For example, again, Jeff Goldblum here as Zeus, cooking in the backyard. You couldn't put forth a more unintimidating, weak Zeus. I mean, if this was like your neighbor in Melrose Place, a complaining Jeff Goldblum, you just blow him off. You wouldn't care. A wet noodle flapping around in the wind is more intimidating. Okay, if this was the only thing by itself, I wouldn't be thinking about this. but you have a fat Russell Crowe depicting Zeus in that horrible, wretched Thor movie. I think it was called Love and Thunder. So what's up with this? Not Nilk, if you're listening to the words coming out of my mouth, if you're trying to praise whatever these gods mean to you, whether they be real entities or beings or not, Zeus is going to be pissed off. You don't put Zeus as Jeff Goldblum and as a fat Russell Crowe. You're trashing Zeus, and the point of this little sidebar is maybe they are intentionally trashing Zeus. Okay, back to this apotheosis of George Washington at the top of the U.S. Capitol dome before we look at the individual Greek and Roman myth. Hey, George, did you agree to this, George? I mean, if you are what the history books say, you just were looking out for us. I mean, the last thing anybody like that should want is to be depicted with Greek and Roman gods. Weren't all you founding fathers a Christian? The U.S. was founded as a Christian nation. Well, they did this to him, Matt, without his permission. I don't know. How you know? Maybe he specifically won. He said, you put my apotheosis at the top of the Capitol building, you sons of bitches. Maybe he specifically requested it. If he specifically requested it, what kind of sick individual would want to be in a fresco with Greek and Roman gods? That's just weird, dude. Okay, why do the ancient Greek and Roman buildings with the columns, why do they look the way they look? Well, they're trying to emulate the land of their gods, right? Mount Olympus. If the Romans stole all the Greek gods and just transitioned Zeus to Jupiter, well, they probably stole the whole idea of Mount Olympus too. With all these columns, this is how Mount Olympus is depicted. These are the Greek gods here in front of Mount Olympus. So the architecture on the ground reflects Mount Olympus. So Washington, D.C. is the modern Mount Olympus. I mean, this is just one example, the Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. of what? 100 buildings that all carry forth the architecture of the ancient Greek and Roman. It's saying Mount Olympus, the gods of today, either they want to be the gods of today or they actually, whatever these creatures are, reside in Washington, D.C. That's what all the Roman architecture is saying. It's announcing itself to be your god of the people, your Mount Olympus. So this conversation leads us back here, a place where we often find ourselves, the "In God We Trust" slogan on the dollar bill. Again, our friends and family will remind us that, Matt, this country was founded as a Christian nation. Oh, sure. So let me get this straight. You're really smart. They've been talking about a separation of church and state for roughly 200 years, and church items can't enter schools or public buildings, but "In God We Trust" is somehow stayed on the money. You're really smart from Davenport, and you can't explain why separation of church and state and all they taught you in elementary school doesn't apply to this. You know why it doesn't? Why it didn't have to be removed? Because it obviously doesn't represent the Christian God. And the first grade truther will go, Matt, it's Satan. And my friend Tony will say, Matt, there is no conspiracy. First grade truther, it's not Satan either. And you know what it is? It's money. It's money itself. The God of this place is the materialism itself. The material life is the God of this place. It's choosing this side of the Vitruvian Man, or it could be, again, Washington, D.C. has positioned itself as the modern day Mount Olympus. They're saying the not Nilk, its minions, those that control the material plane here and distract the real spirit, say, "In God we trust." Like, you, by using this thing and having to participate in our commerce, they're saying we're your gods on Olympus, and it's hidden in plain sight. And they say we'll show you. Here's all our Olympian architecture. Here's the apotheosis of George Washington on the top of the Capitol building. One of y'all heroes, we've made one of our gods. George has become one of us. Now, don't make the mistake of trying to talk to your friends and family about these issues as I have. You'd be reminded as I have. They say, Matt, everybody knows Washington, D.C. needs the tourist dollar. And when you design buildings, you use the most impressive architecture at taxpayer expense to bring in the tourists. Everybody knows that the ancient Greek and Roman is the coolest, and it's just pretty pictures. And you talk about symbolism, Matt, you people, and your Alpo-Phinia seeing connections where they don't exist. It has nothing to do with trying to relate to ancient Greek and Rome. Over here, it's just pretty pictures. And over here, it's just pretty architecture. It's just to bring the tourists in. Why you people got to read into everything? Okay. Oh, this is Matt speaking again, by the way. I would say back to them, then again, to explain how in God we trust is allowed to remain on the money decade after decade after decade, when our entire lives we've been hearing about the absolute requirement to have a separation between church and state. It's obvious because it's not the God you think or that anybody thinks. Okay, this is very interesting. I was sitting here for a minute thinking about how many times this in God we trust on the dollar has been challenged, saying it has no right to be associated with government because it's of God and things like that. So I put it into Google. Look, AI overview. Hey, thanks, AI overview. It says yes. Now, this will be all bullshit, of course. We'll have to kind of read between the lines as to what's really going on here, but I think we'll be able to figure it out. I have no idea what's here. Yes, in God we trust has been challenged multiple times, including in court cases and by President Theodore Roosevelt. Oh, sure, that Rough Riders working for us. Aro now versus United States. In 1970, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit heard a case challenging the inclusion of In God We Trust on currency. The lawsuit argued that the law requiring the phrase to appear on currency violated the First Amendment's Establishment Clause. Oh, this is very interesting. Let's continue. Next, Woolley. The Supreme Court indicated that they would reject the argument that the motto on currency was unconstitutional. The majority of the court argued that currency is not directly associated with the owner or made to display, unlike license plates. Well, truth research community, there you go. The currency is not directly associated with the owner. You don't own your own money. Of course, if you go through all their legal catacombs, they have those clauses. You don't own your bank account. It is not your money. You're holding it. You can buy a cheesesteak with it. You can use it, and they'll lend it to you. They're telling you right there, it's not yours. And the bizarre second component to this, not made to display, unlike license plates. What the hell are they talking about? Yeah, you've got to display your license plate to drive. Well, yeah, if I have dollars in my pocket, I don't have to staple them to my head and show everybody what I'm carrying around. But what does that have to do with everything? Before the credit card, say the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, when a lot of these challenges were taking place, it was all cash. Not made to display, it was displayed hundreds of millions of times a day as people passed these dollars back and forth to each other daily to buy things. It was in front of people's faces 100 million times a day. I mean, I know everything's digital now and you just put your little chip card up to your gas station or whatever, but remember what it was. It's the most displayed thing in human history. These decisions and rulings and arguments from the Supreme Court are so pathetic, they're obviously meant to cover up what it really is. And we'll get to the bottom of it, not Nilk. Mark my words. At the bottom, Supreme Court rejection of the 2018 appeal. In 2018, the Supreme Court rejected a case attempting to overturn the use of the motto stating that the phrase does not compel citizens to engage in religion. How stupid do these Supreme Court people think we are? Actually, I'll answer that. They think we're pretty darn stupid, and in the most cases, they would be right. But this doesn't make any sense. So let me get this straight. In every case where they said this is a violation of a separation between church and state, or a certain manger scene had to be removed from a courthouse, or a Christmas decoration, or a reference to the Ten Commandments removed from this federal building, in every single case, those displays compelled people to engage in religion? Well, that's the basis of the Supreme Court ruling. What are they talking about? Oh, In God We Trust does not compel anybody to engage in any religion, but some sort of religious display in a federal building compels people to engage in religion. And they get away with these sort of rulings because it isn't a religion. They're saying the materialism, the money itself, and they're saying, we are your gods. There's no religion. It is what it is. So, they can twist anything. Sorry, AI overview, you suspect. I don't buy there's only been a few significant challenges to the In God We Trust on the back of the dollar bill. And as we play this out, we could turn it into a creepy scenario of what might actually have happened to those who challenge it. That's why I put the creepy catacomb image here. There's probably been hundreds of challenges against the In God We Trust. Think about it, 1965, 1970, 80. You're a 28-year-old attorney, and let's say your little practice isn't doing too well, and you look at the money, you say, I can make a name for myself. I can be the one to finally have the "in God we trust" removed from the money. You're thinking as a young attorney just coming out of law school, where they lie to you there as well about how the law really works. You'd say, I can make a name for myself. This is a slam dunk. So the young attorney looks down at the dollar bill and views it through the glasses of how the world should work, how the world is presented to the great unwashed and the proletariat. Again, says this is an obvious religious reference, and I'm going to make a name for myself. I'll be famous, and my practice will boom after it's me who removes the "in God we trust." This should only take a few weeks. And maybe some of the young attorneys that challenged it, I don't know what happened over the years. Let's just play this out as a fictional story. Some actually did their research and were very sharp in their argument, or pushed too hard, or maybe uncovered some things in the Black's Law dictionaries that they're not supposed to interpret properly, and maybe they actually were getting close. And the day of the decision, a strange messenger shows up before the young attorney and hands he or she an old parchment in the form of an envelope with a wax seal and a symbol in that wax that seems to be pressed in from a ring. The messenger stands quietly as the young attorney opens the envelope. The young attorney says to the messenger, who hasn't yet said a word, "Isn't today's ruling going to be at the same federal courthouse in which I've been appearing all week?" And the messenger leans forward and says, "No." The person looks down, there's a map. "These are the catacombs of Washington, D.C., under the swamps. Be there at 3:30. And the messenger says, "Yes." Mr. Messenger, would you like to come inside for a drink?" "Fuck off." "Okay, sorry, I'll be there at 3:30. Per Google Maps, the young attorney arrives at the address given. It seems to be nothing more than a cave entrance. There's a man in a puffy white coat standing out front. "Pope Francis, is that you?" "Yes, my son, you'll need to come inside." "What are you doing here?" And he says, "I work for these people. You didn't think I was at the top of the org chart in this place, did you? I work for the entities you're about to meet with. See, you've been getting too close. We need to reveal certain things to those who get close, but you'll need to take an oath that what you see and hear today will never leave these catacombs." The attorney is led deeper and deeper underground. Electricity and all signs of technology disappear, replaced by candlelight and torches. Pope Francis, in his big puffy white coat, stops and says, "I can take you no further. You will need to approach my masters alone." At the center of the room is a floating Baphomet that hushes the crowd, the dark minions of this reality and the old money that have taken the form of a primate to show respect for their master of ceremonies. "Come in, my child," it says, "and take a seat." Things need to be said that cannot be expressed publicly in a federal courthouse. Did you believe you were the first attorney to bring forth a somewhat intelligent challenge that the notion of "in God we trust" appearing on the currency should not be there because it's a violation of church and state? The reason these challenges go nowhere is because "in God we trust" does not mean what you think or what anyone else thinks it means. Forget the notion of the Christian God. Even if it means Lucifer or Satan, we would have had to have removed it decades ago as a violation of church and state, because Satanism in some respects could be considered a religion. It remains because it means none of those things. It means something that almost no one, other than those that have been led into these dark catacombs, will ever see. It is not in any way an expression of religion. It is simply a fact to be taken quite literally. As real spiritual beings pass their currency back and forth and participate in our energy harvesting endeavors, it is very factual and literal. In God we trust. We, the collective of real spiritual beings, using the currency, participating in our commerce, they are trusting in the God of this place, which is materialism itself, which is money in and of itself, which is the entire system that's set up to take and steal energy from real spiritual beings. If it's used, and there is no way not to use it, there's no way to get around it in the system that we've created, in God we trust. It's not a representation of religion in any way. It's a literal fact. As you pass our currency back and forth, a currency which we've outwardly and openly stated, you don't even own your own money. As you pass your currency to buy whatever you seek in the material world, in God you trust. No statement of religion. It's a fact. No different from in food you find sustenance. In water you find hydration. In God you trust when you use this green thing. It's that simple. Mr. Baphomet, sir, can I ask a question? Yes. What do you things, or creatures, or whatever you are in here, what do you get out of it when you said real spiritual beings use your currency to transact? You don't know? No, what do you get out of it? Do you have a dollar bill on you? Well, yes, I'm an attorney. Take a dollar bill out and flip it over. What do you see on the back? Do you think that's pretty pictures? That's sigil magic. They're runes. They help us harvest the energy, just like what was presented in Trading Places. No matter who sells high or buys low, makes money or loses money, Duke and Duke get the commissions. We take energy every time there's a transaction. And now we've converted it so you don't need to use the physical money anymore. But because those runes and that sigil magic exist, that's one reason among many we'll never get rid of the hard currency. We need drug dealers to push their drugs into the inner cities. That's why we'll always need the hard currency. The first grade truther comes forth and just says, they want to get rid of currency and cash. No, they don't. At the very minimum, they want drug dealers to continue to be able to sell their wares. But they need, the credit card doesn't seem to carry the same pretty pictures of the sigil magic and the dark runes. I think that the cash might always need to exist for that reason. But I'm straying a little bit off the point here. That's not pretty pictures on the back of the dollar bill. It's how Duke and Duke gets their commissions. Now, you need to promise me, son, you won't reveal anything that's been said or shown to you here today. And if you're a good little boy, you'll be invited back here as one of us when you make senior partner. So, thanks for coming to your Amish classroom today, where before we go clear fields, we will summarize what we learned today. We learned today that Washington, D.C. literally sees itself as the Mount Olympus of the new century. We learned that a fat Russell Crowe should not be playing Zeus unless the Notnook wants to intentionally embarrass Zeus, which is trying to do with Jeff Goldblum in the horrible, wretched new series on Netflix, Kaos. And we learned that In God We Trust obviously has nothing to do with no God that you know of or no religion, or it would have been challenged and successfully removed decades ago. Now go clear fields. I'll see you back here tomorrow.